Hi everyone, Nicolette, your CEO and founder of the Green Mustache Organic Juice and Live Food Bar. We now have 6 locations. 3 of them are being built out right now. So you will be able to go to different communities in British Columbia and gather 100% organic, plant-based, whole food meals that are unprocessed, literally as healthy as possible, that come from the farms and, get processed into amazing meals, simply by washing and chopping, cooking and eating it raw, juiced into juices and made incredible desserts. So check us out at greenmustache.com. And if you want to create a green mustache in your community, give us a call or look us up online and fill out an application to own your own amazing healthy eatery, so you can bring health to your neighborhood and your community and friends and family. In fact, virtual health consulting, where I teach people how to eat to beat disease. So that's chronic disease and cancer, and literally food is medicine, and I teach you how to do that. Certified as home therapy, and we work alongside your medical team, the perfect protocol designed for you, and then I come in, teach you how to implement that protocol so you can kick your diseases to the curb for good. And ultimately it's all about boosting the body so that it can heal itself, and we use food as medicine to do that. Now, we are also launching the Richer Health Retreat Center in Pemberton, BC, which will actually be an oasis for healing, where you can come and rest for 6 days, 6 nights, and you'll be fed 100% meals, cold pressed juices, made fresh on site, get massages, do lymphatic drainage, yoga, creative writing, have health and healing coaches, amazing team, naturopathic doctors, MD, and your body and your healing process. And then we'll also give you education on how you can go home and continue that in your own house with your family. So what are we talking about today? We're nature versus nurture. Now, I'm always amazed about, well, I shouldn't be. I mean, I went back to school, did my pre-med sciences, thinking I would go to med school because I thought that's where I could have the greatest impact and where I could be the gatekeeper. I could, have patients come to me, and when I recognized that their breast milk wasn't coming in, I wouldn't want to prescribe a drug right away. I would actually refer them to a chiropractor who might need to do a simple adjustment on their spine so that they could actually create that brain, body, breath, health connection. That lactating mother to actually be able to produce milk. And there's a great chiropractor, Dr. Terry Dixon, in North Vancouver at the North Shore Wellness Center, who does that all the time with women who have a hard time breastfeeding. So I went to med school thinking, or did my pre-med courses thinking that that's what I thought I could also be the gatekeeper for the people who needed to go to acupuncture and the ones who to maybe just take a week off or go do Pilates or go take a vacation or take iodine because they need to restore their iodine deficiency. And I quickly realized that going into medicine would not allow me to do that, most likely, because of the rigid boundaries that exist. So what I learned, though, in those pre-med courses forever changed my life, because like most of you who probably were forced to take at one point, maybe in high school or first year university, and perhaps you didn't like or couldn't relate to it. Well, after doing this work that I do using food as medicine with my clients for 10 years, going back to school to study sciences was literally a walk in the park. It was a heyday for me. I loved it because I got to get into our DNA and DNA replication, really looking at how the cells are affected by our environment, so our environment outside of our body, but also the environment inside the body. I got to learn how to kit literally in my kitchen. I was doing this all online because my youngest of my biochemistry course and chemistry course, and they emailed me a kit, the lab kit, and I would breastfeed my little one, put her to bed, and then 11 o'clock at night I'd go down to my kitchen, sterilize everything, bring out the kit, put on my goggles, bring out my Bunsen burner, and I would start mixing potions. kitchen counters. It was incredible. And then I would do that for a few hours, complete my exams, and then send it off to my professors and go back to bed. I had so much fun doing this, but it really solidified the work that I'm doing, because when we learn these sciences out of context, we don't realize how much they apply to us as human beings. I don't think we realize when we're young and taking those courses for the first time, or if you're a medical doctor and you were forced to take those courses just so you can do well and get into med school, where you would then be taught how to diagnose and prescribe, which is what doctors do. It's their job to diagnose and prescribe so that your symptoms can go away. I often asked a lot of the doctors when I was thinking about going to med school, like, do you remember anything you learned in those basic science courses? And then it's like, no, there's no room in your brain to remember all of that when you have to go to med, and then all the bones in the body and physiology, and then get on into third and fourth year university, where you have to learn really about how to diagnose and prescribe, and that takes up a lot of brain capacity. So there's not much room to remember just the basic sciences. And at the end of the day, we are biology. We are the study of life, our own human bodies. This is not any different from grass and trees and flowers and animals. And we are a living laboratory, a biochemistry. Like, you can literally look at our bodies and see how we are a petri dish. And so anyway, I away by those courses because it definitely verified the work that I'm doing is the right kind of work. At the end of the day, because food is a collection of molecules and the things that can't even be measured that affect our physiology, our anatomy, that affect everything in our body at all times. And without the right nutrients, our bodies can't function. If you have too many nutrients and minerals as well, that shuts down and suppresses our body as well. But let's get into nature versus nurture, because a lot of my clients come to me and they say, well, my parents have the same chronic disease that I have, or perhaps the same cancer. And I recently had a client that said, my brothers and my dad are all on the same heart meds, and so it must be genetic. And now that 97%, anywhere between 95 to 98% of chronic degenerative diseases and cancers are actually not genetic at all. They're actually lifestyle diseases. And what does that mean? So a lifestyle disease means basically our human lives, the way we lead our days, the stress, the food, the water we take in, the relationships that we have, our mindfulness or lack of mindfulness, our ability to breathe well, all of those things that we do on a daily basis, our health, and can cause diseases. Those are lifestyle diseases. So we're used to, thinking about risk factor that increases your chance of getting cancer. We now know that measured actually contains carcinogens, which means that the more chicken you eat, the higher your chances of getting cancer. Now, I have 3 daughters, and they're there all the time when I'm having calls with clients, or my clients will call me sometimes at dinner, which I should probably have boundaries, but I don't, because when somebody's sick, they need help right away. So my daughters are used to hearing me talk about cancer and chronic disease. They're used to, but sometimes they take it in a way that is not always accurate. So I want to clear up one of those things. So we were sitting at sushi one day. It was the end of the school year last year. And, a bunch of the kids, we were crammed into a booth. My girls were there, all the kids ordered chicken karaage, which, super tasty for most people. If you love the taste of chicken, especially deep fried chicken. And, my girls, they chose, vegetarian sushi options. They chose to be vegetarian about 8 months ago. And so my daughter looks at all the kids eating the chicken and she goes, chicken causes cancer. And I looked at her and my jaw hit the ground, because here I am sitting with all of these children and my daughter's telling them that chicken causes cancer. And we need to clear that up, okay? Because at the end of the day, we can't say that eating chicken causes cancer, because we know that people eat chicken all the time and it doesn't cause cancer in everybody. So why, though, are the that's coming out saying that the more chicken you eat increases your chance of getting cancer. Well, it's a lifestyle risk factor. It's an environmental trigger that can increase your chances of getting cancer or creating cancer in your body, because you don't get cancer from the outside. It gets created from your own cells inside of your body. And it is a lifestyle risk factor. And now the PCRM has come out and they've announced that for processed meats also increase your chance of cancer. So now we have to, and they're actually looking at banning processed meats in hospitals, because why should we be feeding patients who are already sick processed foods that contribute and help and further increase the chance of getting cancer? So I had to explain to the whole group of students there, my children's friends and my children, that, there's a correct language to use. So going around saying this causes cancer and that causes cancer, it does work for some things. Like we know for smoking, we know for certain toxins that are known carcinogens out there, it does cause that. But we're talking about nurture versus nature. And when we're looking at nurturing our bodies, we need to nurture them in a way that we reduce all the risk factors that could potentially lead to chronic disease and cancer within our bodies. And what that means from a genetic perspective, that if your parents have the same disease that you have, there is a high probability that it is not genetic, that it's actually just caused because of the fact that most chronic diseases don't kick in overnight. They take years and years and years to build up in your body, where the symptoms, you might start with indigestion, and then it moves into heart issues and skin disorders. And then eventually when the body just can't support itself, then it really manifests as a chronic degenerative disease that can be diagnosed by a doctor. And we're all used to this, right? You go to the doctors for 1 year, they tell you your blood work's fine, they can't get anything wrong with you. And then sure enough, a year later, they're able to see that and able to diagnose it as a definitive chronic illness. If you're lucky, a lot of people never get that final diagnosis, and they're always left wondering. So even though your parents might have the same disease, it's most likely that you grew up in the same environment that they did, right? They're your parents, and you probably lived in the same house, on the same block, in the same city, in the same part of the world, where you were eating the same foods, sleeping on similar types of mattresses, taking in similar. Is an incredible human being and an incredible biologist in this Downstream. And what that means is anywhere where you live, to look upstream. Okay, now that doesn't mean you're looking upstream, but in a way, yes, upstream from you, which means, or it could be hundreds of miles away from you and overseas, but if the wind is blowing in your direction, if the foods are coming from there and moving into your community, you're transporting them in. If the water is flowing through the rivers and ending up in your community and you're drinking it, all of those things affect your health, right? Because there's no boundaries when it comes to air, water, and soil. Okay, the soil flies through the wind, it gets transported, our food is grown in it, it gets moved around. Air and water, the same thing. There's no, like we have, between the US and Canada, there's of those boundaries. Our waste, our toxins and pollutants really put it to organ systems and weaken our body and prevent them from what it's supposed to do. So, you for me, and I mean, it could come from north, south, east, or west, it doesn't matter. But you need to look, because sometimes your community might be clean. You might have great composting systems. Pollutants. Right? If you have a farming community that's, a few miles away, a lot of those toxins can be blowing diluted compared to actually living in that community. But it's not to say that it's not your groundwater, that those toxic pollutants are not going to get into your body in some way. So Sandra Stein developed bladder cancer. And apparently her parents had the same type of cancer, and a lot of people in her community had the same type of cancer. But she was told it was that she was adopted. And once she thought about that and said, well, how can I, as an adopted individual, have this same cancer as my parents? And so she started doing all of this research, and sure, capital of the United States, where tons of pesticides were being used, toxic pond dumps all around her community. The groundwater was contaminated, induced by these same toxins. So started doing that research. And now remember, at the time in observations and her research. So she ended up rewriting that book and even creating a documentary, which was done just recently, which has actually confirmed her findings, her observational findings from the 70s, to show that yes, our lifestyle, our environment affects us. And also in the last 30, 40 years, we've moved from thinking that a lot of these chronic diseases are genetic to realizing that now, yes, you have the nature part. There is some of us definitely who do carry genes that are passed down from our parents and that make up who we are. And so some diseases, yes, definitely are genetic. But in my entire history of working with clients in the last decade, I've only ever had one client where the lifestyle change, the food change, eating clean, wholesome foods wasn't working for this one individual. Health history, realized that she had broken her bones 27 times. And normally, first to remember, how many trips to the doctors we made, how many surgeries we have. We tend to want to forget those things, kind of like giving birth. You have one baby, it's not, well, there's pain, but you forget it really, really quickly, and allows you to have another baby. Well, it appears with my clients that a lot of them forget that they had cancer. They forget that they had chronic diseases. They forget, that they had injuries and surgeries. But because we go through a full health history, a decade at a time, we're able to pull all of that out, and then we're able to see patterns. And in this one client, we noticed that, okay, something was going on, and it definitely, in this case, was not lifestyle risk factors that caused her illness. It was actually genetics. But that was one client in hundreds that I've worked with in the last decade. Now, for her, that was incredible because it meant that she can go get the genetic testing that she needed, and then she can get the treatment that she needed to help her. Because in this case, yes, her body, it wasn't going to actually take her underlying condition. It was discover that because, of course, at the end of the day, it's nice to have the relief, to not always be questioning what's wrong with me. Now, for the most of us, what come from my parents, my mom, I have arthritis. My, dad has, he's predisposed to heart disease, and so now I have heart disease. And then once we think like that, what it does is it puts us on the back of taking charge of our health. Necessarily go out there and say, what can I do to improve my health? We just say, you know what? It's genetic. That's the way. Accept it, and then they go on with their lifestyle that's actually. Now, it's hard to arrive at that point and have ability for your health. But this nature-nurture debate really is required that you do that. Because at the end of the day, there's a biological term called epigenetics. And I love and read about this day and night. It's so fascinating to me, and I want it to be fascinating to you as well. Now, what epigenetics is in the world of nurture versus nature is that even though your parents do pass down your DNA, comes from both of your parents, it doesn't mean that even if you have the gene that can be in disease, it doesn't mean that it has to be expressed. And this is where lifestyle factors come in, and lifestyle in general. You can prevent those genes from being expressed literally by your lifestyle, by the food you eat, the stress in your life, by mindfulness practices that, of course, being active to allow those genes not to be expressed. Now, what does that look like? So let's take the example of B12. So when you take methylcobalamin, what's happening is there's a methylation process. So there's actually we'll call it a cap, like a hat that's put on the DNA strands to stop certain genes from being expressed, or which allow other genes to be expressed. The good genes get to be expressed, and let's say the bad genes don't get to. Now, if you're deficient in B12, or if you're deficient in D3, or if you're deficient in any nutrient, what happens is that you allow those genes to express themselves, which then what happens is if those genes express themselves, they can manifest and look like the disease they have or not getting. So Bruce Lipton, he's considered the father of epigenetics. Read his book Biology of Belief. It really talks about how the brain-body connection and how even the way we think affects our genes. Now, he was one of the first to really he took stem cells, which contain all of the that your DNA, which basically then is the coding to pretty much tell your body what to be. It's supposed to be 5'1". It's supposed to have the hips that are this size. It's supposed to have these color eyes, arms, fingers that are long and lean or short and stubby. It doesn't matter. Your DNA matches the coding that really makes you who you are. Now, what Bruce Lipton saw is when he took stem cells and put them in petri dishes, separated those cells into 3 different petri dishes, and he, by affecting the environment of those cells in the petri dishes, he was able to get the certain genes to turn on, keep certain suppressed, and have certain genes turn into other things. I'm trying to keep this as basic as possible because obviously the world of chemistry, biochemistry, and biology is quite complex, but basically that's it. And he noticed that when he fed the stem cells a culture that contained material that was toxic to the cells, it would mutate those cells. It would affect those cells and cause a DNA mutation. And at the end of the day, that is there is. When we eat well and we have a rich, complex, abundant, nutrient diverse diet, that supports healthy DNA replication. If we're missing nutrients, it can cause unhealthy DNA replication. When you put toxins into your body, unhealthy DNA replication. And so he saw that the environment that those stem cells were in were directly affected by that environment in a positive or negative way, and really at its basic level. So what this meant in research, particularly for cancer, is that they realized you can turn cancer cells on and off. There are certain proteins and there are certain factors will suppress genes that actually prevent cancer cells from mutating, being mutated for and growing into tumors. There are certain things that will stop those cells. Anyway, we've covered a lot of that. I can go on and on about that. There's great videos on YouTube. I suggest that you watch them. Epigenetics, gene expression. You can Google on YouTube, cell replication, DNA replication. Even videos that really sing song how that works, and it's truly fascinating. Really to geek out on that, start to love it, because that is what's happening inside of your body. So what researchers found is that they can turn cancer cells on and off, and this is truly life-changing, because you support a body so that the body can and find cells that are mutated and turn them off, recognize them, et cetera, et cetera. And how do you prevent cells from being mutated? There's a really active role in that, and you need to support the body, so you support the immune system and the hormonal mutated. Now, a client recently, she was, came to me about her father, who's, he's about 88 years old. He has cancer, and she wanted to see if, the Gerson therapy could help him. Now, his cancer is quite advanced. It's a brain cancer as well, which makes it much more challenging on the Gerson therapy. It doesn't make it impossible. But, I said, what is the end goal here? Your dad's 88. Do you want to cure him? Are you looking to extend his life? He was given about 2 months. And I said, because at the end of the day, he is 88, and cancer is a disease of the elderly. And since the dawn of time, cancer has been around since the very beginning of time. And it affects everything. It affects trees and animals. And, I mentioned dogs. And it was fascinating because she was so shocked to learn that dogs get cancer and that cancer exists in nature. She thought it was just something that affected human beings. And she was also surprised that it was a disease of the elderly. So I thought I would clear that up. Cancer used to be a disease of the elderly. After a lifetime of your DNA replicating, and it's done such a good job making you who you are, this strong, vibrant individual, eventually there is a breakdown, similar to a vehicle, right? That the more you drive it, the older it gets, things start to break down and it doesn't run as well. And at that point is when cancer presents itself, especially in North America and a lot of the Western cultures that live off processed food. This is now starting to happen faster and faster and faster. So now we have children, babies that are being born with cancer, and we didn't see that, 100 years ago. It's no longer a disease of the elderly. There's cancers that never used to present themselves before the age of, 50 or 60 years old that teens are being presented with. There's boys in their 20s that are now getting prostate cancer, men that have breast cancer at significantly higher rates than ever before. Yes, men do get breast cancer. Dogs, 1 in 3 dogs get cancer now, and 1 in 2 people are diagnosed with cancer. And those weren't the rates that existed 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. And they predict that those rates are going to increase by about 25%. I think by 2020 is what they're saying. So understanding the nature versus nurture debate, I think if you can start to understand that lifestyle is really what affects our health, it's not actually your genes that you inherit from your parents, your DNA that you inherit from your parents that necessarily needs to be expressed. What you can do is take your health into your own hands. And by understanding that cancer, chronic disease, it's not a new phenomenon. It's been around since the beginning of time, and you have control over that. So you need to use your body as a living laboratory. I talked about this in the beginning, using it as a petri dish and saying, okay, if I have this beautiful DNA, every stem cell that you have in your body has the DNA that can code into anything, whether it's an eyelash, an eyeball, a shoulder, the left shoulder versus the right shoulder, left boob versus the right breast. It doesn't matter. That DNA can code. And it's because of the gene expression, certain genes being turned off, that stem cell will turn into lips versus eyeballs versus a big toe. And it's truly amazing when you start to understand that. So then you can take control of your health and realize that if your body is a petri dish that has and contains the stem cells that can be created into any part of your body, you have control of how that gene expression takes place. We know that toxins affects the gene expression, and we know lack of nutrients affect the gene expression. So if you restore your nutrient deficiency and you get rid of the toxins in your body, you have a much higher chance of not expressing the genes that are going to lead to that disease. Now, my client who had heart disease, whose father and brothers also had heart disease, it took him about 2 months to be able to get off all of his meds once he switched to a beautiful whole foods, clean, raw, and cooked plant-based diet. And when he came to me, I mean, this guy was fit. He can cycle to the moon and back. He was incredibly fit for a 65-year-old man. And he still had heart disease, though. And it was shocking because on the outside, he looked incredible. On the inside, his body was a mess. But it only took 2 months for him to be able to reverse his heart disease and get off his heart meds, lower his blood pressure and his cholesterol, and regain his health. And that all comes down to how we express our genes, how we use our diet and those environmental risk factors to then eliminate the toxins in our body, get rid of the arterial plaque, get rid of heavy metals, get rid of anything and everything that's affecting your body and stopping your body from functioning properly. Now, what else did I want to say about nurture versus nature? I think the most important part that I want to leave you with is the fact that 95 to 97% of all chronic diseases are actually lifestyle induced, environmentally induced. Okay, so that means by the water you drink, the air you breathe in, the food you ingest, the stressful or non-stressful lifestyle that you have, mindfulness practices, breathing, exercise as well, affect all of those things. We know that people who engage in moderate exercise every single day, they produce natural killer cells in abundance that help keep cancer cells at bay, that help to either suppress them, kill them, eliminate them out of your body. But without a healthy diet and some moderate exercise, then you don't produce those natural killer cells that our body is just designed with. It's not, a drug you have to go get from the pharmacy. It's basically there within us. Our body contains everything it needs to keep cancer at bay, to keep chronic disease at bay and fully suppressed so that it doesn't express itself in our body. So once you accept that fact about the nature-nurture debate, that nurturing your body is key to living an optimally healthy lifestyle, you can actually start to take action every single day to start promoting optimal health. And you will no longer doctor's diagnosis is it being, well, that's genetic. Chances are that your parents have that disease, so therefore you're going to have to live with it, and then you may undergo the surgery or take the pills for the rest of your life, or perhaps go through some treatment protocols that you don't necessarily need to go through, that you could potentially avoid. So read out about epigenetics, DNA replication, get familiar with it, start to love it, get to know those terms, don't be afraid of it. Our body is biology, our body is chemistry, it is biochemistry. We are nature, and we are affected by our environment, internally and externally. So you need to make sure that our cells are always bathed in nutrients, free of toxins, to be healthy. If there's any questions you have about this, I love to deep dive into it, so definitely send us questions. Would love to talk more about it. I know that this conversation for some people really can stir up emotions, even anger, because of the fact that you might be dealing with something that truly does feel like it is genetic. And like I said, in about 3 to 5% of those cases, that might be the case. But with the work I do with most of my clients, like I said, I've only ever seen one case where it truly was genetic, where all the rest, it was lifestyle induced. And now is the time to get started. Don't wait till next year. Experiment with yourself. See what would happen if you actually reduced the factors that could be affecting your health. And it could be smoking, drinking, stress, meat. We know meat definitely has an impact on our health. Foods, processed foods, high sodium foods, high refined oil foods, all of those things. And, start to see what it's like to introduce more vegetables, to introduce more plant-based products that are whole, that literally come from the farm and enter into your belly, and see what happens to your health. If you want to prove me wrong, give me a call. If you have a particularly complicated chronic disease case and health issues that you want to tackle, please give me a call, because I am results oriented. I like to get to the bottom of it. If it truly is genetic, I want to help you understand that and to find that so that you can get the right treatment. If it is lifestyle, then I want to help you get to the bottom of what are those lifestyle risk factors that are contributing to your genes expressing and manifesting as that disease. So let's get to the bottom of it. Let's take control of your health. I'm here to help you. Richer Health is here to help you. The Green Mustache is also here to help you by taking the stress out of cooking, taking that out of your life and making it convenient and affordable to get 100% organic, plant-based, whole foods into your diet. So thanks for being with me as we tackle the nature-nurture debate, and stay tuned next week on Tuesday at noon as we tackle health-related problems, chronic disease and cancer, and how we can use food as medicine to help stop, arrest, prevent, and reverse those. Thanks for being with me. Enjoy this amazing week.